Hello everyone and welcome to a game a lot of you have recommended. It's from round 7 of a tournament called Spilimbergo Open, and it's a game between Levy, Rozman and Albanian candidate master Klendi, Zeneli. And a lot of you have recommended it for very good reason. It features a beautiful queen sacrifice for 4 connected pass pawns, something you don't see every day. And it's been, I don't know, a few years since Levy covered one of my games on his channel, so it is an honor to have the privilege of showing such a nice game that he played. So let's check it out. Levy has the white pieces and he opens with knight to f3. He starts it off with a Reti, and we have pawn to d5, a standard reply to the Reti. We have g3, the king's Indian attack, and now pawn to g6. We have bishop to g2 and bishop to g7, both players nicely fianchettoing their bishops. We have d4 and pawn to c6. So pretty standard stuff, strengthening the d5 pawn as it could be a target later on in the game. Castles and knight to f6, and it's a pretty standard position where c4 is the move that pretty much everyone plays here. It's been played by Caruana, by Ding, by Topalov, and it's considered the best move. But Levy goes for pawn to a4. It's a very rare move, only been played in a handful of games, and in top tier chess, not with best results. One game that had a great result was Vincent Keimer against Daniel Dartha last year in the FIDE World Cup, where Vincent won very nicely with pawn to a4. So it's hard to say if this game had any influence on Levy's choosing of the line. But, well, obviously it comes as a preparation, as he still has a full hour and 30 minutes on the clock. So, okay, a4 and pawn to a5. Black says, alright, let's stop pawn to b4, and now pawn to c4. And here there are some games where castles was played. Also, knight to a6 has been played here, and it makes sense. Knight to a6, you played both a4 and c4, so b4 has been weakened. Knight to a4, knight to b4 might be very useful in the future, but again, it's hard to say. Obviously, Klendi decided not to waste too much time, just played d captures on c4. As you can see, no time wasted on the clock, and I am traveling at the moment, so this setup is temporary. Sorry about if there are some glitches with the sound, or I think sound has been pretty much fixed, but yeah, there are some problems with the clocks. And the interface as well, I'm using the same interface on my computer, and this is a laptop, so but I mean, you can see it. So okay, d captures on c4 and knight to a3. Levy wants to capture on c4, and then he will have two very strong knights in the center of the board. We have castles, knight captures on c4, and now knight to e4. Very principled, as Levy has yet to play queen to c2 or rook to e1 or pawn to e4, so you want to grab that e4 square for your knight. We have queen to c2, attacking the knight, and knight back to d6, offering a trade of knights, and b3. Levy says, alright, if you want to trade, I'm just going to improve my pawn structure. And yeah, as you know, the saying goes, to take is a mistake. We have bishop to f5, attacking Levy's queen, and queen to d2. So you can see still playing fairly quickly. Of course, this is not a line that Levy knew that was going to be played, but perhaps he knows the proper placement of the pieces. We have bishop to e6, now putting pressure on the c4 knight, and queen to d3. More moves with the queen, but again, with a good idea. The knight is nicely covered, and you never want to capture on c4 and allow Levy to improve his pawn structure. So knight to a6, hinting at knight to b4, and Levy goes bishop to a3. Stops knight to b4, or rather invites knight to b4. That's exactly what Klendi played. Knight b4, we have bishop captures, a captures, and now knight c to d2. Preparing to remaneuver the knight, but also for the moment you need to guard that b3 pawn. And it's hard to say how good this position is for white, as you do have a weak b3 pawn. You don't control the center for the moment, but at some point you will execute e4, maybe by e4 right away, or e3, e4, and you will have maybe double rooks on the c file, and perhaps a passed a pawn at some point. So knight to f5, and now pawn to e3, just defending. Other moves are possible, of course, but knight to f5 comes with a triple attack on the d4 pawn, and Levy for the moment has to play e3. He cannot advance the pawn to e4 right away, and Klendi goes for pawn to c5. Makes sense to attack Levy's strong center. We have pawn to g4, forcing the knight to move, knight to d6, and now look at this, d captures on c5. This is what really starts the game off. Levy sacrifices the exchange, and if you've played against the dragon or against some other openings that have a fianchetto dragon on g7, you know that sacrificing a rook for that bishop is often a very good idea. Bishop captures on a1, we have rook captures, and now knight to c8. Again, it's hard to say where the knight really belongs, maybe to e8, then to g7, or maybe to e8, then to f6. But as I often say, knights are tricky bastards, and it's not easy to foresee such things. So knight to c8 and queen to e4. Very nicely centralized by Levy. And also it keeps the queens on the board. You sacrifice material, so you want to keep the queens on the board. Also you attack b7, you attack b4, one of those pawns is going to fall. So bishop to d5, giving up the b4 pawn. Queen captures on b4, and now knight to a7. You have to figure out a way on how to get that knight back into the game, and now pawn to e4. Also queen to c3. Getting the queen off of that b4 square to start advancing pawns with pawn to b4 right away is also a very good idea. So knight a7, we have pawn to e4, bishop to c6, and now queen to c3, making a room for that b pawn to start marching forward. We have queen to c7, preparing to get the rooks into the game, and now knight to e5. b4, again, always a possibility. Levy has a very concrete idea of what he wants to do. We have knight e5, rook f to d8, and now he plays knight e to c4. The problem with knight d to c4 is that if you play pawn to f6, it looks like, maybe not the best idea. The knight will have to go to f3, but this is in fact okay for white. Because it will weaken the black king, and if you try to win a pawn, let's say bishop captures on e4, then knight b6, and you're already in big trouble. The rook is hanging, and also queen to c4 check will be, winning for white. But okay, Levy played knight e to c4, getting that knight to c4, and now queen to f4. Very nicely activating the queen as the g4 pawn is now hanging. So h3 and rook to d7. Klendi decides to double up on the d file, as one always should. We have knight to e3. Knight to d5 is the destination, if at all possible. And now rook a to d8. Nicely doubling up. We have rook to a2, defending the knight on d2, and now rook to d3, kicking Levy's queen off of that beautiful c3 square. Levy goes queen to a5, attacks the knight and the rook, so you have to be careful not to move this rook anywhere weird, like rook captures on e3 even might be a move in some lines, but queen captures on d8 makes it not a possibility at the moment. So rook 8 to d7, getting the rook off of that nasty square, and inviting queen captures on a7 to capture the knight on d2. And here Levy plays a beautiful idea, knight to d5. Disconnecting the rooks, and now you have to play something, otherwise just queen captures on a7 is winning. So bishop captures on d5, e captures on d5, and now what do you do with the knight? Not a lot of squares for you to defend the knight. You could play something like queen to b8, but that's a really passive square for the queen, or you might go something like knight to c8, but that's also really bad. So Klendi played knight to c6, and this is where the game gets really interesting, and why you guys suggested this game so much. Feel free to pause the video and win the game for Levy while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this brilliant idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is D captures on c6. Sort of giving up the d2 knight and allowing queen captures on f2 at some point, but not if you sacrifice your queen. So rook captures on d2, rook captures, threatening on f2. It seems like there's no way to stop that. Now queen captures on d2. Beautifully played. Queen captures on d2, and now c captures on b7. And this is the position from the thumbnail. Probably it helped you to solve the pause the video moment a little bit easier, but yeah, I mean, how do you react to this, and how do you continue? The game is even from this point equal, but only if you find a very particular move, and that is queen to e1 check. In the game it was not played. In the game queen to d1 was played, but yeah, I mean, it's so hard to see why. The reason why queen to e1, of course you cannot go to h2, then queen e5 check, and you just continue checking. So you have to block with bishop to f1, and now queen to b4. Sort of stops all the pawns, and now c6, you will play e5, and after pawn to a5, of course you cannot advance, just queen captures on b7. So a5, as the queen cannot capture, otherwise you advance the pawn. e4, and now after pawn to a6, you play e3. So that was the path to a draw. but I mean, good luck finding that. With pawn to a7, e captures on f2, let's say king captures, and now queen to b6 check. You pick up the a7 pawn, and the pawns can never cross the dark squares. That's the problem. You have a light square bishop, and you need to cross the dark squares. That's not happening. So after c captures on b7, queen to d1 check was played, and now Levy's position is winning. King to h2. We have queen back to d8. This is how the queening square is defended, and now pawn to b4. This, I mean, it's a move that wins in pretty much all of the games, all of the lines, but here it's the one that does not give you a winning advantage. Here you actually have to play pawn to a5. So pawn to b4 is kind of a loss of a tempo here, but again, very, very low on time, so players have to make do. We have pawn to f5, pawn to a5 now by Levy. Remember, if you play pawn to a6, pawn to a7, the game is winning. There's nothing the black queen can do against the two connected pass pawns on the 7th rank, against two, friendly pigs. Queen to b8 with check, king to g1, and now f captures on g4, h captures on g4, and now queen to e5, nicely centralizing, and b5 is winning here. But I mean, again, good luck finding b5 here. So a6 was played by Levy, and this sort of allows Klendi back into the game, but only by a little bit. Queen to e1 with check, king to h2. We have queen to e5 check, repeating the position a few times. King g1, queen to e1 check, king to h2, queen to e5 with check, and now Levy goes king to h3. We have pawn to h5 going after the g4 pawn, a7. And now, if you don't have a draw, then the two connected pass pawns are winning. So let's see what happens. H captures, king captures, and queen to f5 with queen to f5 with check. We have king to g3, and now queen to e5 with check. f4, queen to e3 with check. Queen to e1 check is actually what you have to play here. After queen to e1 check, it's going to be a draw. But again, very hard to see why, because after king to g4, you will have queen to e6 with check, and then after king to f3, queen to b3 with check, and so on and so on. King f2, queen to a2 check, king to e3, and now you can capture on a7, and the c pawn is pinned. So crazy stuff like that. If you could play c6, then of course you would be winning. But after f4, queen to e3 check was played with a minute on the clock, but yeah. Now Levy is completely winning. He blocks with bishop to f3, queen to g1 with check, king to h3, queen to f1 with check, and now bishop to g2 blocking. We have queen to d3, and now king to h2, and queen to c3 is a move that is recorded in the game, but I don't think it was actually played. I think Klendi was, picked up the queen, and he wanted to see what he will do, and then either his time ran out, or he just, plays, congratulated Levy and just put his queen on c3, and the software recorded the move, even though, from this perspective, it doesn't really make any sense. From this position, you just resign. Because if queen to c3 was played, you can just play really whatever, and you'll just play like b8 queen, king h7, or whatever. You're going to bring another queen into the game. There are no checks, there are no tricks. This is just completely winning. You can choose your, how you want to win. You can even, promote all of these pawns to queen, and then win the game like that. So yeah, a beautiful victory by Levy. After queen to c3, his opponent Klendi Zeneli resigned the game, and very, very nice victory for Levy Rozman, who bounces back after a loss in round 6. And yeah, it just goes to show that, in chess as in life, it doesn't matter if you're, struggling at some point. If you really persevere and you really put your mind to it, you can, end up with 4 queens or 2 queens, so to say, in life. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nicely played by Gotham Chess. I would like to thank Karl-Heinz Haas, Martin Georg Paparik, Duitron, Michael Bowers, and Carmen Polifronio for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And if you haven't seen the game Levy covered that I played, I don't know, a couple of years ago, will be the first link in the description below. See you soon.